Chapter 54. 10 minutes later, Huaishur finally realized what was going on. It seemed like he was being targeted by some dark force. Why? Huaishur slammed the table in grief and indignation. I only kicked him twice. Why is he acting like this? That's not all. I saw it clearly. Yu Dongri raised his finger to correct him. Not only did you break his little finger, you pulled his hair, you snatched his box, and you even kicked his crotch twice. If I were Wang Hai, I would definitely not let you go. How could you forget so quickly that you even hit him with a stick? Let me go. I'm just a prostitute. Yu Dongri blinked proudly. Look, I'm weak, helpless, and pitiful. And bald. Huaishur added, That's enough. My hair has already grown out. Yu Dongri was so angry that he took off his wig. He leaned over and pointed at his tragic hairline. Do you see it? Do you see it? It's already grown out. It's okay. It grows fast and it falls fast. Huaishur didn't even bother to look at him. He lowered his head and ate. Needless to say, the pigeon was quite delicious. Since it was Yu Dongri's treat, he didn't hold back and ordered another pigeon to make soup, as if sensing Huaishur's low mood. Yu Dongri put out his cigarette and pushed the dishes next to Huaishur. There's no need to be afraid. It's just a few small fries. You don't have to face the rancher head on. Don't underestimate the Astronomy Association. Kid, your backer is one of the strongest in the world. Even if the rancher comes to the Earth, he'll be beaten back to his paradise. If you really go up, you'll only be dealing with a few small fries. He suggested, if you think you can't do it, you might as well resign. Huaishur paused for a moment, then lowered his head and continued to gnaw on the pigeon leg until the bones were clean and thrown into the plate. He pulled a piece of tissue to wipe his hands. No, actually, I'm not afraid, he said. It's just that I'm a little angry. No matter how powerful the rancher is, I don't have to worry about him, right? Huaishur raised his head and said seriously, but why is it so difficult just to live a good life? Yu Dongri was dumbfounded. He was silent for a long time before he shook his head and sighed. Because life is never simple. Huaishur, he said, sometimes ascenders seem to have more choices than ordinary people, but sometimes everyone has no choice. Something will happen that you don't expect. It will hurt and upset you, but you have to try to accept it. Whether you want it or not, this is your life. When you become an ascender, maybe you'll have already bid farewell to your past life. Huaishur. It's just that you're still stuck in the past. He looked at the teenager with a complicated expression. If you just want to live a peaceful life, it's actually very simple. Even I can help you do it. Change your name and identity. You can withdraw and start over in another city. Huaishur shook his head without hesitation. My home is here. I'm not going anywhere. Your home is just an empty house. That's also my home. The teenager calmly replied. With it, no matter how miserable I am outside, I can at least be a domestic dog. If I didn't have it, then I would have to be a stray dog. Yu Dongri was silent. He didn't say anything else and just patted him on the shoulder. After the meal, Yu Dongri dawdled in the toilet for a long time. He didn't know how much hair growth cream he had applied before he came out. After paying the bill, he asked Huaishur where he was going. He asked if he could give him a ride. You bought a car again? Huaishur was shocked. I rented it. Yu Dongri opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. He started the engine and drove the car on the road. He looked at the road outside and suddenly said, I'm leaving. Didn't I tell you earlier? I plan to go out and play for 2 years. I finally packed up these 2 days. He pressed down the window and lit a cigarette. I'm leaving from Jinling on the early morning flight. Where are you going? America first. It's said that there are a lot of places to play in the free cities of the United States. Yu Dongri talked about his long travel plans. Next, I'll probably go to Rome or Egypt. I'll come back after spending all my money. Oh, Huaishur scratched his head. Have a safe trip. Yu Dongri shook his head and smiled. He didn't answer. He just reached out and picked up a paper bag and threw it to Huaishur. This is for you. Huaishur took the paper bag and opened it. Inside was a flat square box. When he took it out, he saw the logo on it and suddenly couldn't believe it. Where did you get this? A friend from Rome gave it to me. I forgot it in the box and didn't open it. I found it when I was packing, but now everyone uses mobile phones to listen to music. I don't know what to do with it. Yu Dongri said, if you like it, take it. Then I'll take it. Huaishur raised his eyebrows happily. He opened the plastic seal and the Cowan logo on the box, revealing the palm-sized music player inside, the brass body, and the manual adjustment of the upper side of the double control knobs. He couldn't put it down. It was even more pleasant than getting the border relic. In this era, where everyone was beginning to get used to mobile phones, very few people would think of this kind of thing called MP3. It was like being abandoned by the era with the CD player. Except for a few enthusiasts, very few people would pay attention to this kind of thing from the past. And the price of the remaining ones was getting higher and higher. Just this one player was already comparable to a good handmade piano. If it was a gift of the same value, Huaishur might not accept it, but Yu Dongri's choice left him no room for hesitation. Besides, he broke a car worth millions. If he accepted a player worth more than 10,000, the burden on his conscience was negligible. It was a return gift for Bawang shampoo. Looking back at the smiling teenager in the passenger seat, Yu Dongri had no idea what was going on in this guy's mind. He could only shake his head and sigh, "It's good to be young." Finally, the car stopped in front of the Stone Marrow Museum. Huaishur got out of the car, installed the player with satisfaction, and waved goodbye. "Have a safe trip. I'll treat you to dinner when you come back." "We'll see." Yu Dongri smiled and waved goodbye. "Take care of yourself." The car left. Huaishur watched old Lu's shadow disappear. His heart suddenly felt empty. He stood in place for a long time and shook his head to dispel the sadness. "I can't worry anymore. I'll be gay if I worry anymore. I can only wish old Lu a safe trip." In fact, as soon as he got home, he began to worry again. The crow landed on the table in front of him. She wore a mask as a white coat, a miniature stethoscope around her neck, and a tube of dark green medicine wrapped around her wings. "Come on, body check." She took out a pair of glasses from somewhere and put them on her beak. Her voice was gentle and charming. "Let me see if you're developing normally. If it wasn't a crow, then it would be fine. Is there a problem with my graphics card?" Huaishur sighed, leaned back on the chair, and let her do as she wished. In fact, it was no different from a simple physical examination in the hospital. It had almost become a daily routine. His weight and height were measured, and his blood was poured into some strange reagent for testing. With Huaishur's alchemy knowledge that was close to nothing, he couldn't see anything at all. He didn't need to see anything. For his own body, he had a more intuitive feeling than any other test. His development had begun to accelerate. If the original process was slowly accelerating, now he was running on the highway and began to rampage, growing wildly. Every day, he could clearly feel his body strengthening. The itchiness and pain of his bones growing had already woken him up from his dreams several times. After 2 days of muscle growth soreness passed, he began to feel his heart beating erratically from time to time. He always felt the phantom pain from his internal organs and limbs. In less than a week, he had grown 4 centimeters taller. The size of his clothes before was almost obsolete, and now his thin arms and legs could actually be seen with the outline of his muscles, especially his hands. his nails grew faster and faster. He now cut his nails once a day on average. Every time his nails were cut, he could smell the hallucinatory smell of sulfur. According to Crow, this was a side effect of specialization, because his direction of improvement seemed to be perception type. Even if the growth was over, his muscle strength wouldn't increase to an exaggerated degree. As compensation, some of his joints, tendons, and bones would be strengthened. His nerve reaction speed and internal organs would be further improved. Most importantly, his eyes, ears, smell, and touch would be strengthened. According to Crow's evaluation, this type of perceptive type was the most suitable type for survival. It could see far, smell a lot, hear a lot, and have explosive power. It could also run very fast. It was like an old dog, slippery and slippery. If one did not use special tools, it would be impossible to catch it. Coupled with the premonition of death, that she kept dying and dying, Weisher felt that she would be able to survive until the end of time. But there was a flaw. For some reason, his face was getting paler and paler recently. He looked more and more like a pretty boy, the kind that was powdered. His originally tanned arms were now as white as jade. Even the blood vessels under his skin had become clear. This made Weisher, who longed for a tough guy's style, feel very uncomfortable. Isn't this too sissy? He looked at himself in the mirror. Can't I be more normal? It looks like the effect of the medicine is good. Crow seemed to be quite satisfied with his results. He took off his glasses. If it continues like this, you can be buried in about a week. What the hell? Weisher was alert. Did I accidentally say something? Crow blinked innocently. I seem to have heard someone say, buried in the ground. You're probably hallucinating, aren't you? Crow looked away and sighed helplessly. This is a common symptom of puberty. Like puberty, there are always some shameful things happening. You have to get used to it. Faust would always ask for things that were of great significance to them, such as the lives of their family members, the sacrifice of their children, and so on. The serious consequences caused by this were countless. Otherwise, the astronomer wouldn't have let the armored man guard this book. After the price exceeded the limit, he would directly cut off the head of the questioner to prevent Faust from giving the answer and concluding the deal. 1 Odysseus gold coin was still within the range. Ai Ching was silent for a moment, took off the gold coin on the silver chain from her neck, handed it over, and didn't say anything else. Faust laughed proudly, held the gold coin, and greedily licked it as if he craved the sweat and body odor on it. He swallowed it into his stomach. Then he wiped his mouth in satisfaction and answered her question. Just like how birds can't stop the storm. In other words, after Wang Hai, there was still someone controlling all of this and brewing a plan. Ai Ching frowned. The item that was extremely precious to her was only exchanged for such a sentence. Even if she was prepared, she still felt very unhappy. She was silent for a long time, let out a long breath, and suppressed her anger. She raised the second question again. Will their plan lead to changes in the Deep Hell, Magic City? Interesting question. Faust smiled and looked around. Let me think about it. What is the price of this question? What should I take away? No, what should I leave behind to make you feel unforgettable pain? Soon, his gaze fell on the wall. It was a picture frame covered by a dust-proof cloth. He turned around and looked at Ai Ching's livid face. He smiled in satisfaction. I want it. The sword-bearer didn't react. Ai Ching was silent, her hands gripping the armrest tightly. Under Baishi's skin, the blood vessels were pulsing angrily. After a long time, she closed her eyes. Take it. Faust laughed heartily and snapped his fingers. The picture frame began to burn, and the dust-proof cloth fell to the ground. In the dancing flames, The silhouette of a woman holding a child could be vaguely seen. It was as if she was holding the world's treasure. She smiled brightly at the camera. Her smile disappeared in the flames. "Answer me," AI Ching said softly. "Answer my question, Faust." AI Ching finally raised her eyes and said softly, "Since you are happy enough, it's my turn next." At that moment, Faust's eyes widened. He bent down. He stared at his abdomen in astonishment at the dagger that had gone into the hilt. The dagger was pulled out. A bright, holy light emerged from the spine of the dagger, evaporating the drops of black blood with a sizzling sound. This was the farewell gift she had prepared with great care. Bang! His body shook and collapsed again, little by little turning into an ink-stained mosquito, and was pulled back into the violently flipping book. "Go back to your hell, Faust." AI Ching looked at him indifferently. "Enjoy the eternal life and omniscience that even your slaves would pity." "No, I will look forward to, in pain." The demon cast a mocking glance at the mortal world. "The next time you and I meet, the price you will pay." The figure disappeared. The armored man's hand that held the sword clenched and relaxed. In the end, he did not do anything. Although she was suspected of damaging relics at the border, AI Ching did not break any rules. Therefore, the pages of the book closed, and the shackles came again. His sealed eyes seemed to look at AI Ching. After a long time, he retracted his gaze, turned into a phantom, and left. In the silence, the study returned to silence. After a long time, suddenly a phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. The phone rang persistently, as if waiting for her response until she reached out and pressed the answer button. "Who is this?" "Xiao Qing? It's me, Chi-Wen. Do you still remember third Uncle Chi?" Warm laughter came from the phone, and a slightly old voice said, Sorry, I suddenly called. Did I disturb you? When I heard from the old master that you were in Exine High, I was shocked. Why didn't you come to my place after such a long time?" The old man on the phone sighed. "Coincidentally, your cousin just came back from America. You young people must have a lot in common. You should interact more. How about I ask him to pick you up tomorrow, and you can come to my place for a meal?" AI Ching listened silently. She suppressed the unhappiness and gloominess in her heart. She had enough of this old man who took advantage of his seniority. "Mr. Chi, there is no need for a meal. I have been busy with work recently. We are family. There is no need to be so distant. Are you still angry at your family? Blood is thicker than water. There is no hatred that cannot be resolved." Third Uncle Chi sighed with melancholy. "If you are really angry, I will apologize to you, okay? The old master will be celebrating his 100th birthday in a few months. Don't be angry with him anymore. Every time there is a festival, the old master will ask if Xiao Qing is back. Is Xiao Qing back? He calls you, but you always don't pick up. No matter how important work is it more important than family? Moreover, didn't the old master do it for your own good back then? Look, in the end, your father still succeeded in ascending. Even you are showing signs of awakening your source substance." A crack appeared on the pen in AI Ching's hand. In the silence, AI Ching lowered her eyes. She could no longer hide the gloominess and anger that seeped into her bones. She let the person on the other end of the phone chatter on for a long time until he shut up. "Mr. Chi, let's end the boring conversation here. I still have work to do, so let's end it here." She said, "Finally, please remember that my name is AI Ching. AI as in mugwort leaves, Ching as in sky. Since you think that way, I have nothing else to say." In the silence, Chi-Wen did not say anything else. He only sighed. "The old master often tells us something. Children who do not come home will suffer outside. The dial tone came. The phone was hung up. AI Ching calmly put down the phone with an expressionless face. If good news was like a dove that never arrived, then bad news was like a crow that always came in groups and then kept leaving behind stinking feces, leaving behind a disgusting mess. They would erupt in one place, at the time you least expected, in the place you least expected. Now, not only was there a problem with the work of the returned people and the vicious fable left behind by Faust, but the pressure from her family was also blocking her at the most inappropriate time. Even though this pressure had long been within her expectations, she had long been aware of how precious she was as a puppet. Whether it was from her family's standpoint or her personal judgment, she would not allow herself to drift away from the Ian family. After declining for nearly 100 years, the current Ian family had finally recovered with great difficulty, but it was already far away from its original prominent position. If they wanted to recover their former glory, who knew how long it would take? Compared to the long-established aristocrats abroad, a few decades could be said to be short. There were many examples of them returning to the peak of power after enduring humiliation for more than 100 years. Of course, there were even more corpses that did not survive. This was a long gamble where everything was at stake. Every bargaining chip was crucial. In other words, in order to achieve this goal, every clansman, whether it was the main branch or the side branch, was an incomparably precious consumable. Moreover, AI Ching had already become the inspector of the Astronomical Society. Even if she was just a newcomer, the hidden power behind her could reach an astonishing level when necessary. It could be foreseen that the Ian family was already prepared to participate in this struggle between the main party representing the five mainstays and the border party representing the border. Perhaps they had already made a bet. And what role would she play in their plan? Chapter 57. In the quaint office, Chiwen hung up the phone. He didn't sound as decrepit as he had sounded on the phone. He just seemed a little old. His mottled white hair was combed neatly, and his suit was well ironed. His eyebrows were strong, and he looked dignified. At this moment, he didn't show any displeasure. He just rubbed the space between his eyebrows with a slightly complicated expression. Behind the desk, the young man eating oranges looked up casually and asked, "Dad, what did she say?" Wen's expression was calm. "She's still young and doesn't know much. She'll know how good the family is in the future. Then she doesn't know how to appreciate kindness." The young man sneered. "The father is a good-for-nothing, and the daughter is a cripple. Did she really think that she could become a supervisor on her own? If you ask me, Dad, you don't have to waste your feelings on a good-for-nothing who will marry into the family sooner or later. TSK, if it wasn't for Old Master's intentions, I wouldn't want such a defective product for free." Bang! Wen's teacup shattered in front of him. Hot water splashed everywhere, almost scaring him. "Shut up, good-for-nothing. What's going on in your head? You can't figure out Old Master's intentions." Wen's eyes widened as he glared at him. "You can't meddle in the Savior Society's affairs. You actually hooked up with that group of lunatics and even left behind that scourge. Are you afraid that I won't die of anger early enough? Yuan?" Yuan was stunned for a long time, then said stubbornly, "Aren't I just trying to help the family?" "Shut up. Hiluo, come in." Wen suddenly slammed the walking stick in his hand, and a strong man walked in from outside the door. "Send this wastrel home," Wen said coldly. "Before the news blows over, break whichever leg he dares to step out of the door." "Dad, aren't you going overboard?" Yuan was indignant. "Why does it seem like I poked a hole in the sky just to earn some money? Weren't you the one who hooked up with them first? What are you afraid of, Dad?" That be asterisk TCH will pour tea for you sooner or later. Does she dare to offend us? Chi-Wen was so angry that he didn't want to talk to him anymore. He closed his eyes. Soon, Chi-Yuan was dragged away by his bodyguards, leaving He Luo alone in the office. His expression was still calm, and he did not speak. After a long time, Chi-Wen rubbed the space between his brows and finally heaved a sigh of relief, and he recovered his calm and deep appearance from before. Is it about the Savior Society? He asked. Wang Hai has been hiding in the suburbs for the past 2 days. He seems to be contacting someone. He Luo said. Young master was deceived by him, and it seems like he even offered a reward. Although I've cleaned up the traces, I'm afraid the trouble caused by the Savior Society will implicate us. Where is he now? I don't know. This afternoon, he told me that he wanted to see you. He Luo paused for a moment and repeated Wang Hai's words. He said that he had the will of the baptized. As instructed, I told him that the boss was recuperating and would not see anyone. Then he left. Chi-Wen lowered his dark eyes. Very good, he said. Very good. In the silence, Chi-Wen's fingers tapped on the walking stick, and he seemed to be talking to himself. Over the past few decades, why is there always so much trouble in a place as poor as Xianhai? After so many years of waiting, the Huai family fell. And then the Yin family came. Finally, the Yin family left, and the Savior Society started to hide in the dark again. He narrowed his eyes and mumbled softly, one after another, they want others to be their pawns. He Luo did not speak. Chi-Wen did not need an answer. It was as if he was calculating some difficult choice. His expression kept changing, sometimes dark, sometimes ferocious, until He Luo took a step forward and interrupted his thoughts. Ignoring his angry gaze, He Luo said in a low voice, Boss, it's time to make a decision. Chi-Wen looked coldly at this assistant who had followed him for many years. After a long, long time, as if he had finally made up his mind about something, he closed his eyes. What about that cowherd who was asking around? He was taken care of yesterday. His body sank into the sea. He Luo replied. My subordinates asked him clearly. This was his personal operation and had nothing to do with the Astronomy Society. Wen's expression calmed down slightly. Does Yin Qin know what happened back then? That matter was dealt with very cleanly. There was no trace left behind. He Luo replied. After the matter, I found someone to place a soulless seal on everyone involved. Even if they don't die early, they will become idiots and won't remember anything. Even if she knows, she won't have any evidence. In the silence, it was impossible to even hear the sound of breathing. After a long time, Chi-Wen looked up. Then let's end it. His expression was cold. Cooperating with them back then was a mistake. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been in so much trouble today. Tomorrow, no, tonight, you will go and clean up all traces of the Savior Society. Don't leave anything behind that can be used against you. Even though the Chi family is small, not just any crazy person can come and mess with us. Okay. He Luo nodded. What about Yin Qin? We don't need to do anything. Chi-Wen narrowed his eyes. The most important thing now is to pull us out of this mess and leave. Xianhai is about to change. I want to see how long she can jump on this fire pit. In the evening, Huaisher received a delivery. To be exact, it was a car without a tag that stopped in front of the Stone Marrow Museum. After calling Huaisher to come out, it left a box behind and left. Yesterday's delivery style was like this: quality, quantity, and speed, but don't ask for too much service. Crow stood on the table, its claws swiping across a row of phones. On various apps that Huaisher couldn't recognize, the list kept updating. There were all kinds of products, and the payment currency was a mess. There was a constant ding sound, like a takeout order. After getting the basic tools, she seemed to have been making all kinds of medicine. On the surface, she said that she was working hard to support her family, but Weisher didn't know how much money she was making. He only heard her complain about how hard life was. Who would believe that when Weisher walked into the basement with the box, he only saw a few crucibles on the table gurgling. Gases of various colors kept floating up. If not for the 100-watt light bulb above, he would have thought that he had walked into the lab of some crazy alchemist. To be honest, it's because we don't have the money that it's so old-fashioned. We can only rely on flasks and beakers. To this, Crow expressed her disdain. With the current budget, we can't even afford a good centrifuge and solution crystallizer, much less a clean room and a bunch of other things like a cracking furnace. After looking through the list of requirements, Weisher only felt that this fellow wanted to open a chemical factory under her house. Her head hurt. When did alchemy become so up-to-date with the times? Don't be silly. Beakers and crucibles are only used to fool junior, high chemistry classes. How can they be compared to professional equipment that costs millions? Crow turned back to look at him. The essence of alchemy is to burn money. How can you get stronger if you don't spend money? Weisher was indignant. I've spent so much money, but I don't see myself getting stronger. That means you haven't charged enough. Why don't you charge more? You haven't even charged a Ferrari yet, and you dare say you paid for it? Crow rolled his eyes, gesturing for Weisher to place the items on the table. At noon, she sold the stolen goods that Weisher had risked his life to bring back, the horns of the crying snake. It was said that the quality was quite good. She simply chose to barter and got a lot of materials from the other side. After checking, Crow nodded with satisfaction. Not bad. In this case, you can gather the materials for the next potion and the main materials for the stigmata. That's it. Weisher lowered his head and looked at the various things sealed in bottles in the box. A few bottles of powder of different colors, a crystallized cluster, a few pieces of black iron ore, and various liquids that seemed to be extracted from plants. He didn't understand what was going on at all. This is rainbow gold. In the past, the Northern Europeans would call the phenomenon of spatial transference a rainbow bridge. This is the natural material left behind after the phenomenon ends. It is a high-quality material used as a concoction. This is the proof of the Silent One. It looks like an ore, but it is actually a polymer of origin substances. Only after a person abides by an oath and a trust to guard a secret for a lifetime will it have a chance of appearing after death. It can be said to be the crystallization of will and loyalty. For it to be the size of a thumb, it seems that the secret is indeed extraordinary. As for the ores, they are very common. Some of the shadow iron and frost silver from the border are the cheapest. These are all essential materials to help you create the stigmata. Crow explained, then finally looked at the sacrificial knife that Weisher had placed on the table. However, the main material is this thing. The sacrificial knife let out a trembling cry as if it was afraid. It constantly tried to jump out of its sheath and escape, but when she stepped on it with her claws, it stopped moving. It only cried out miserably, as if begging for her mercy. It was clearly the awe-inspiring blood drinker demon knife, but now it looked like a lab rat waiting to be slaughtered. Crow suddenly asked, "Weisher, do you still remember what the stigmata is?" "Yes, I remember you said a solidified miracle." "Yes, that's right. The so-called stigmata is the name given to an invisible miracle after it has been given a physical body." Crow shrugged slightly. Although these miracles often bring disaster, but people who expect miracles from hell to bring happiness must be crazy, right? The reason why relics from the border are special is not only because of their function and because they are in hell, but also because they are the products of the abyss miracles. It is not an exaggeration to call them another type of stigmata. Hearing this, Weischer finally understood. He could not help but roll his eyes. So, you are going to dismantle a car, take out the engine, and make me a little sheep, right? Something like that. Tear down Peter to pay Paul. Crow flapped its wings confidently. Don't worry, there is not much that needs to be used. I will gather the rest of the things, and this knife can probably still be used, right? Weischer was too lazy to say anything more. He could only pray that the stigmata would not be too much of a scam. He did not ask for much, as long as she did not take out the basic functions and sell them as downloadable content. It was okay to pre-sell it every few days, but if there was a gold collector's edition, who could stand it? By the way, what is that? Weischer pointed to the water basin in the corner where a strange map appeared. He could vaguely tell that it was the terrain of Exan High. In a remote place, a spot of light flickered silently. Oh, that! Crow glanced at it and said meaningfully, that is where Wang Hai is hiding now. Chapter 58. At first, he was at a loss, then stunned, and then shocked. What the hell? Weischer jumped up in fright and leaned over to look at the bird's-eye view in the basin, distinguishing the appearance of a decadent factory in the suburbs. Unbelievable. Wang Hai is here? Yes, Crow asked. It's just a watermarking method that marks and traces through the branching ink. Is there anything incredible about it? Weischer's eyes widened. Why didn't you say so earlier? But you didn't ask. Crow looked at him with a puzzled expression, full of innocence. Weischer couldn't help but want to pick up this damn bird and crush it to death. You're clearly a traitor. He slammed the table angrily. Look at you, you eat my rice, live in my house, steal my electricity, and use my network. I won't argue with you about this, but you clearly know that this grandson wants to kill me. Why did you hide it from me? Oh, Crow looked at him curiously. If I told you earlier, what would you do? Nonsense. Of course I would call someone to deal with him. The Astronomy Society or the Special Affairs Division. Or both. Crow laughed strangely. But how do you want to explain that they are hiding in that place? Weischer opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted. No, I'm not talking about the method you used to find his hiding place. Crow paused and glanced at the reflection in the water. But how do you explain why the property that once belonged to your family became the nest of the purified people? What the hell? Weischer's eyes widened and looked at the basin in astonishment. You said this place, this thing, belongs to my family? You've really forgotten all about it. Crow looked at him with pity. Why do I, an outsider, know more than you? No, it should be said that this is something that can be understood by a little investigation of the property rights. Yes, she said, the place where Wang Hai is currently hiding is one of the Hui clan's cargo transfer warehouses. In other words, the place that belonged to your family more than 10 years ago has now become a fasting circle for the pure people to raise border mutants. Following his words, countless old papers flew through the air and landed in front of Weischer, forming a neat stack. I can understand your confusion and bewilderment, but this is indeed the conclusion drawn from the old files in your home. Weischer silently flipped through the papers, page by page. These were indeed the things that had been piled up in his family's storeroom. They were dusty, covered in mold, and discarded in some inconspicuous corner. Forgotten by everyone. Crow was right. That place used to be one of the Hui clan's businesses. It was a warehouse used to transfer goods. But I don't remember. Weischer sat on the chair blankly and carefully tried to recall. However, There were too many gaps in his childhood memories and too many vague things. Chapter 59. In the darkness, there was only silence. Only the sound of chewing could be heard. The faint light illuminated the figure sitting on the chair. He seemed to be in deep thought. His eyes were lowered as he listened to the sound in the distance. After a long time, he sighed. The Chi family betrayed us. He whispered, but it doesn't matter. A fence-sitter like the Chi family is not trustworthy. Betrayal is expected. Compared to such an unworthy ally, an incompetent subordinate is more of a headache. The sound of chewing stopped abruptly. The darkness was like a big mouth that slowly opened and spat out a naked and thin body. He coughed violently on the ground and wailed miserably. After a long time, he finally woke up from his nightmare. He crawled on the ground like a dog and pounced in front of the figure, kowtowing with all his might. "God have mercy, God have mercy, God have mercy," he cried and begged. "I was too arrogant. It's me, it's all me. Give me another chance." In the silence, no one spoke. God seemed to be in deep thought. After a long time, he slowly shook his head. "No, Wang Hai," he said, "if the hunting dog's harvest was due to the hunter's instructions, then the failure of the hunting dogs should also be attributed to the negligence of their superiors. This is my mistake. I underestimated your arrogance. After all, you know nothing about the real world." Wang Hai froze on the spot, as if he could not stand the chill in the darkness. He trembled violently and only whimpered from his throat. "Please have mercy on me. Please have mercy on me. Please give me one more chance. I will not fail again." "No, you didn't fail." God slowly shook his head and said calmly, "In fact, you successfully attracted the attention of the Astronomical Association and the Special Affairs Department. Even if you did not stir up a storm, you have already achieved the minimum goal. The reason why you were punished was because of the contempt you had for the Sheng God." He stretched out his hand and stroked Wang Hai's head. "You were confused by the currency of mortals and have no respect for true power. You also did not give faith and loyalty to the true gods. You can't be created." Wang Hai's body trembled as he felt the chill and terror coming from that hand. He found it hard to scream, and in the silence, tears flowed down his face. From its throat, Fen let out a whine with all its might. "My lord, have mercy, have mercy. The Sheng God has never been cruel. Wang Hai, even a believer must be compassionate." The Lord looked down at him. "If you ask for my mercy, then I will give you mercy and power." After saying that, the shadow slowly got up from the chair, squatted down, and looked at the pleasantly surprised Wang Hai. He then took out a dagger and gently placed it in front of Wang Hai. Wang Hai's smile froze. This transit warehouse had not had any business for a long time, so there was no need for these things. Huai Shi's face was covered in dust, but she couldn't find anything. Looking out the window, he could see the brightly lit warehouse and the staff dormitory next to it. If he really wanted to find something, he would have to go there. However, the people going in and out were all wearing strange white uniforms. It was difficult to sneak in. Logically speaking, this kind of physical work would avoid any white or dirty colors, but it seemed to be completely different here. The white coat was too wide, and there was even a hood. There was only a snake emblem on the chest that he had never seen before. Huai Shi looked at it for a long time, then hammered his palm. "Good. I have to find a way to King do it." Then, the target was very important. He hid behind the window for a long time before he saw a person walk to the foot of a nearby wall, lift up his hem, untie his belt, and start to urinate everywhere. Wow, so unethical. Huai Shi was stunned. He saw the indescribable part of the other party with the help of the faint light. He could not help but sigh in pity. It's you, little fire dragon. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he quietly jumped over the other side of the building. But just as he jumped out of the window, he felt a beam of light hit his face. Huaishur looked up in surprise and saw another security guard, who was also peeing in the corner. How could they hide so well? At that moment, the two of them looked at each other. Who? The patrolling security guard widened his eyes and reached for the baton on his waist. Where did the thief come from? Don't misunderstand. Huaishur's mind raced. Without waiting for him to call out, he raised his hand to stop him. I'm from the gospel class. What's that? The security guard was stunned. He seemed to have heard of this before. Immediately, he was suspicious. Really? Aren't you coming tomorrow? Of course it's true. Look if you don't believe me. Dong chow chow, dong chow chow. As he spoke, Huaishur began to twist and turn, taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Then he opened his mouth and sang, entering the home of God, sitting by the Lord's side. The sweetness is better than our mother's, hallelujah to heaven. Taking 2 steps forward, Huaishur suddenly kicked the security guard against the wall. Without waiting for him to fall off the wall, Huaishur opened his hand and stuffed all the ashes into his mouth. The security guard rolled his eyes and fainted. This is at least 4,000 or 5,000 yuan. You've made a big profit. Huaishur patted the dust off his hand, shook his head helplessly, and jumped back into the room with him. When he jumped out of the window again, he was already wearing his damn white uniform with a baton on his waist and a flashlight in his hand. If he wore a hood, he would be another security guard. Chapter 60. He had just died, and blood was still flowing out. Huaishur squatted down and stared at the body in front of him in confusion. He pulled out a stick from the trash and fiddled with it. The arm was broken. There was a knife wound on the back, a punctured lung, and a fatal wound on the throat. It was a clean cut, almost split in half. Very quickly, Huaishur put down the stick and the door plank in her hands and covered the corpse again. She turned around and looked at the ventilation window behind her. After taking a few steps forward, she turned around and estimated that the distance was about right. Then she sprinted forward with all her might. She jumped up and stepped on the wall to move up 30 centimeters. He just reached the pipe on the wall. However, when he lowered his head to look, he found that his footprints overlapped with another faint footprint. When he raised his head and propped himself up, he saw the fingerprints in the dust by the window. Someone had gone in, and their physiques were similar to his, and they were both sublimators who had undergone secondary development. Otherwise, they might have been the champion of a national competition in the fast jump, or even won an indoor climbing award. There was no sound in the warehouse. There was no extra sound. Huaishur quietly landed and looked around, only to see piles of boxes and wires on the ground. The wires extended to the front and disappeared into the wall. Huaishur only saw a huge iron door, and a cold wind was blowing out from behind the iron door. He sensed it deeply, and it was indeed a cold wind. This crappy thing was a cold storage. After mustering up his courage, he went in and took a look around. In the end, he only saw a mountain of pork. The only thing he found was probably 2 corpses that had not yet frozen solid. They had obviously been thrown in at random. The wound was exactly the same as the one on the security guard outside, and it was equally ruthless and fatal. Huaishur reached out, pulled out the sacrificial knife, and looked around carefully. After a long battle of wits and courage with the air, he had to admit regretfully that he was about to freeze into a retard. Also, the murderer might have left long ago. He walked out of the cold storage and couldn't help but sneeze. The sneeze echoed in the warehouse for a long time, but it didn't attract anyone's attention. From the looks of it, other than the corpses, it was just an ordinary factory. However, at this moment, the ashes in his hand were rapidly appearing. In just a few minutes, he had already accumulated almost half of his bag. The concentration of origin substances floating in the air was shockingly high. Pain and despair radiated from him at all times, almost turning the entire warehouse into a haunted house. Most people wouldn't be able to stand it after staying here for more than a few minutes. Only an idiot like Huaisher would go around looking for plastic bags to collect the ashes. They turned around, took a step forward, and slashed with all their strength. The sacrificial knife and the dagger collided again. A spark burst out from the friction between the two metals, illuminating the two people close to each other and the masks on their faces. One of them was wearing a Peppa Pig mask. The other was wearing a Ma Bali mask. In an instant, there was a dead silence. The original murderous intent disappeared and was replaced by an indescribable awkwardness. In the silence, Ma Bali was the first to break the silence. She coughed twice and said, "What a coincidence." "Yes." Huaisher nodded. "What a coincidence." The atmosphere fell into awkwardness again. In the endless staring contest, the person on the other side asked again, "How should I address you?" A real man never changes his name. Huaisher replied proudly, "Just call me Little Peppa Pig from Huaihai Road." "What about you?" "Nice to meet you." The person on the other side introduced herself, Little Peppa Pig from Hutai Road. Thus, the atmosphere became awkward again. They could not fight anymore. Although he had never heard of Little Peppa Pig from Hutai Road, why did he feel like he had seen her somewhere before? Huaisher was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "Have you eaten?" "Yes." Little Peppa Pig nodded. "Are you taking a walk?" "Yes." Another 2 sentences of meaningless conversation. Perhaps it was because she knew that the other party's background was similar to hers, or perhaps it was because she did not want to waste any more time. Little Peppa Pig took the initiative to make a suggestion. "Then, shall we walk?" "Yes, let's walk." Huaisher took a step back. The two of them slowly put away their swords and separated themselves. They leaned against the wall and maintained the greatest vigilance. At the same time, they gestured for the other party to go first. It would be better to expose the vital parts of their backs. Then they realized that the other party was not stupid and was too easy to fool. They could only advance together. Inexplicably, when Huaisher came to his senses, he realized that he seemed to have gained another teammate. On the short flight of stairs, the two of them exchanged some meaningless pleasantries. Then they racked their brains to find out where the person who copied their character came from. Finally, the two of them stopped at the end of the stairs. There were 2 forks in the road. One went up and seemed to lead to somewhere else, while the other went down and led deeper underground. Little Peppa Pig looked around. Finally, her gaze fell on Huaisher. Up, down. Her meaning was self-evident. Since it was difficult to trust each other, it was better to split up. But should it be up or down? Huaisher scratched his head and thought for a long time. Then he said, "Man walks to higher places, and water flows to lower places. So it's up then?" Little Peppa Pig waved her hand and walked down the path. However, she did not expect Huaisher to follow behind her. She was stunned. "Didn't you say that man walks to higher places? So sometimes you might as well make a cup of happy otaku." Huaisher replied sincerely. What he said seemed to be very philosophical. What a joke! His investigation ability was so weak that it took him more than 10 minutes to find an open hidden door. If he walked alone, he might not even know if the important items floated past him. Interstellar players were too sad. It was better to find someone to come with them. After all, they were all thieves. Huaisher did not want any stolen goods. He could even help. It was reasonable to just want to share information, right? Of course, he would never admit that this place was too dark and gloomy. He was a little scared. Are you sure? Little Peppa Pig looked at him deeply. Forget it. As long as you don't get in the way, I'll pick first. You can have them all. Huaisher waved his hand. He had no interest in the stolen goods or the property of the purified people. He was only here to find someone. It would be a pleasant surprise if he could find out why these guys were hiding in the warehouse of his previous home. Just as they were moving forward, the two of them stopped abruptly. There was someone in front. Or, rather, they finally saw a place that looked like a concierge. Behind the window, they could see a small room. There was a pot of stew on the stove, and a song and dance was playing on the TV. The middle-aged man guarding the place was sitting on a chair with his back facing the window. He was watching TV and eating snacks attentively. He did not even look at the surveillance screen in the corner. Little Peppa Pig pressed Little Peppa Pig back when she pulled out the knife. Don't be so rough. Huaisher sighed. Let me do it, let me do it. He put on his hood again, picked up the security guard's baton and flashlight, walked over and knocked on the window. He was about to resume his old business of gospel singing when he saw the pot on the stove. There was a human head slowly rising and falling in the pot of stew. There were also a few arms and legs stewed until they were soft and tender. The security guard and the concierge turned around. Huaisher opened his mouth several times, but did not know what to say. In the end, he sighed. He pulled out the sacrificial knife. Some things, it was better to be rough. Chapter 61. 10 seconds later, Huaisher sat calmly in the gatehouse, extinguished the fire in the furnace, and pulled out the shiny sacrificial knife from the withered corpse. Ma Bally came in and walked around, marveling at Huaisher's knife skills. Huaisher looked at the passage behind the gatehouse and asked casually, Old Lou, what's hidden behind this? It should be their fasting circle. Ma Bally said casually, then jumped up in shock. F***CK. How did you know it was me? Huaisher looked back at him. I was just asking casually. After all, I don't know many people who are so flirtatious. Ahem, I was just asking casually. Ma Bally looked at him innocently. Who's old Lou? A bald man. That's enough. The two looked at each other in the gatehouse. After a long time, Yudongri looked away, helplessly. Who are you? Huaisher asked. As you can see, a cowherd. Yudongri shrugged. I'm also the 4th-class security officer of the Astronomy Society and a bunch of other miscellaneous positions. Huh? Huaisher was stunned. What's that? It's a double insurance that bypasses the regulations. Ma Bally sat on the chair and sighed. In some sensitive areas, the Astronomy Society uses a double supervision system. There are 2 supervisors, one in the light and one in the dark. The former is involved in disputes, and the latter is responsible for recording the truth and secretly investigating when the former is inconvenient, just like the purified people this time. On one hand, I'm AI Ching's examiner, responsible for reviewing whether she can use the authority of a supervisor fairly. On the other hand, I'm also her bodyguard and fighter. But in order to avoid sensitive issues by directly deploying a sublimator, I can only take a detour. You understand? So you committed a crime. More or less. Yudongri sighed. In short, once this matter is over, I will leave. In order to avoid failing my year-end evaluation, you have to pretend that you don't know anything. I've also written in the report that you're born with divine strength and don't know martial arts. How about we help each other out? Huaisher looked at him warily. Will I be killed if I don't help? If you don't help, you'll have to return the gift I gave you. I will help. I will help. Huaisher instantly revealed a smile. Really? We're so close that we don't have to be so distant. I'll give you 2 more sets of overlords later. Yu Dongri tried very hard to resist the urge to kill this little bastard on the spot. By the way, did AI Ching pass or not? I've already passed the first year. All right? Yu Dongri rolled his eyes behind the mask. If it weren't for the fact that this place is related to the deep hell, Shanghai, I would have left long ago. I wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Also, what's Shanghai? Go ask AI Ching when you get back. I've already said enough. Yu Dongri stood up, not wanting to argue with him any longer. He had nothing to do with the expensive jewelry on his body. Being pressed down by Huaisher, he began to tremble. There was even a fishy smell coming from his crotch. He had already peed. I really don't know anything. I only know how to burn the boiler. What they did has nothing to do with me. I also want to live. Spare me, Huaisher frowned, and was about to ask when he noticed that Yu Dongri patted him on the shoulder and pointed to the front. There was a small door there. Don't touch my family. The fat man's eyes widened as he struggled. Come at me. They are innocent. Don't touch my wife and daughter. Please. Yu Dongri did not speak. He quickly stepped forward and kicked. Bang! The door was kicked open. The narrow space behind was revealed. The first thing they saw was a huge boiler. The flames were jumping inside, and thick smoke was rising from the chimney. It was unbearably hot, but in the open furnace, in addition to the red-hot charcoal and coal, there were a few lumps of charcoal that were vaguely distinguishable as limbs. They were about to be burned to ashes. When Huaisher looked away, he saw luxury goods. All kinds of luxury goods were hung in almost every corner. There were high-end suits cut open to be used as bed sheets, branded satchels stuffed with pots and pans, expensive watches, necklaces, bracelets, and wallets that were strung together and hung on the wall. There was only a dirty bed in the corner. There was a blow-up doll covered with tape lying on the bed. There were 2 Barbie dolls next to it. They were exquisitely and adorably dressed. The fat man screamed and struggled with all his might to break free from Huaisher's grip. He crawled up and threw himself onto the bed. He hugged the inflatable doll and the little person in his arms and cried loudly. He turned around and said something about begging for mercy. Huaisher opened his mouth to ask something, but no words came out. Only Yu Dongri walked up, rolled up his sleeves, and pulled the fat man up. He kept asking questions and even used his ability. After a long time, he let go of his hand in frustration and threw the fat man on the ground. It's useless. He's gone crazy. Yu Dongri lit a cigarette in annoyance. Damn. Nothing good will come out of being involved with this group of lunatics. Then let's go. Isn't there a fork in the road? Huaisher couldn't stand it anymore. He turned around and wanted to leave, but for some reason, he accidentally saw the fat man's finger. To be exact, it was the index finger of his right hand. Then he froze in place. Yu Dongri, who was walking in front, noticed that he didn't follow. He turned around in confusion. Let's go. What's wrong? You go first. Huaisher was silent for a long time. I have something to do. I'll catch up with you later. Yu Dongri looked at him in confusion. He didn't know what he was thinking. He wanted to ask, but when he saw the teenager's eyes, he couldn't ask. He had never seen such a calm expression on Huaisher's face. It was so calm that it made people uncomfortable. It was as if there was something chilling hidden behind that layer of shell. I'll be at the door. Yu Dongri turned around and left. In the silence, Huaisher listened to his footsteps as he walked away. He walked into the incineration room and gently closed the door. That ring, he looked down at the fat man's right index finger. He looked at the platinum ring inlaid with broken diamonds. That ring, where did you get it? I don't know what you're talking about. The crying madman looked at him blankly. He subconsciously hid his right hand behind his back and dodged backward. I picked it up. I picked it up. Bang! His head hit the wall and squashed his inflatable wife. His fat face was almost deformed and twisted into a strange shape. Let me ask you, Weisher lowered his head and looked into his eyes. He asked word by word, that ring, where did you get it? In the violent collision, the madman screamed in confusion. I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm just a boiler. Spare me, spare me. Weisher closed his eyes. He covered the madman's mouth with his palm. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were crazily bloodshot. Immediately after, pitch-black ashes emerged from his palm and poured into his body. For the last time, he leaned down and stared at the madman's face. The ring, where did you get it? The man's eyes widened and tears flowed down. He opened his mouth and wanted to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. Weisher picked up his 2 daughters on the ground with one hand and crushed them one by one, in front of his eyes. I don't know. I really don't know. The man finally broke down and wailed. Why did you kill them? Why? I'm just doing my job and burning the boiler. Those things, they said they didn't want it. I just wanted to give them some gifts. Weisher let go of his hand. The madman pounced on him crazily and wanted to strangle his neck, but he was kicked away. In the end, he curled up in the corner and hugged the remains of a few dolls, sobbing in despair. I'm sorry. Weisher lowered his eyes and walked up to him. He grabbed his hand and violently pulled the ring off. Then he turned and left. The door closed behind him. Are you okay? Yu Dongri, who was leaning against the wall in the corner and smoking, asked. Pretty good. Weisher looked at the ring in his palm and put it in his pocket. He said, couldn't be better. Boom. In that instant, a violent explosion suddenly came from above them. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Countless fragments fell from the ceiling and smashed down, crushing the empty mirror into pieces. Chapter 62. It shook violently as if explosives had exploded above. They could hear gunshots in the distance, as if someone was constantly attacking this place. Tremors and roars continued to sound from the underground space. Weisher and Yu Dongri looked at each other and remembered the unexplored path. They ran up the stairs. When they reached the end of the path, they only saw corpses all over the floor. It seemed that this was the gathering place of the entire sacrificial grounds. The spacious office was decorated magnificently, but at this moment, the glorious pillars and reliefs on the walls were covered in blood. Corpses lay on the ground one after another. Their faces were filled with confusion and despair. Even the flattering smile had not dissipated. Gunshots continued to sound from the inner area. The massacre was ongoing. When they broke into the inner room, they only saw Wang Hai hiding behind the table and begging for mercy. There was also a burly figure standing in front of the table. Under the sleeves of the heavy coat, there were 2 hands covered in scales. There was also a pair of pitch-black machetes. Blood dripped from the blade of the machete and drew a scarlet trail on the ground. It extended toward Wang Hai step by step. If you dare to kill me, God will not let you go. Wang Hai was forced into a corner. His face was pale. I am the representative of God. How dare you? If I die, you will pay the price. Definitely. He waved the dagger in his hand, but it was useless. The man with the machete stepped forward and cut the obstacles in front of him into pieces. The machete whistled and slashed toward Wang Hai's head. Yu Dongri pulled out his gun. Weisher never thought that his marksmanship would be so good that he could hit the blade in the air. Then, the remaining 5 bullets all hit the back of the man's head. Unfortunately, after piercing through the clothes and scales, it was unable to penetrate the mutated skull. The man with the machete staggered. The blade fell between Wang Hai's legs, causing him to let out a short and sharp scream. Tears and snot were already out of fear. "Help! Help!" As if he saw his savior, he looked at the two people who rushed in and shouted, "Help me! I have money! I have tens of millions! I'll give you whatever you want." Needless to say, how could Huaishir watch as the last person who knew the inside story was killed in front of him? He decisively pulled out his pistol and aimed at the man with the knife, who had turned around and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Amidst the roaring gunshots, sparks spewed out from the barrel of the gun. Along with the scorching red bullet, it flew towards the face of the wielder that had already transformed to the point where it could no longer be seen as a human. Its face, which was covered in scales, was not much different from the crying snake's. There were only two small holes, and its dark green lips could not hide its sharp teeth. The teenager wearing the Pepsi mask trampled on his chest, raised the sacrificial knife with both hands, and suddenly stabbed down. Execution. Bang! At that moment, an arm suddenly stretched out from the gap in the snake man's coat. It held a scimitar and blocked the attack, even though the hand was chopped into pieces by the force of the axe on the blade. A third hand, then a fourth hand. In the gap, the fourth hand, hidden behind the naga, stretched out. It held a short-barreled shotgun aimed at Huaishir's face and pulled the trigger. The teenager's movement was faster than his. He leaned back in an instant and dodged the sudden killer. Yu Dongri saw it clearly. Not only did the serpent man suddenly grow 2 extra arms, but there were also wisps of gray mist rising from the young man's body in that instant. It was the ashes that erupted from the seal. They danced like flames, and the power of pain radiated in all directions. The whole inner room was shrouded in irresistible despair. Beneath the mask, the pair of pitch-black eyes had unknowingly turned completely red. It was like a burning fire. The thin teenager had turned into an evil spirit in the mountain. What kind of sacred mark was this? In the pedigree that Yu Dongri knew, there was no such existence. Even if it was only at the mercury level, it was so terrifying. But he had no time to think. He instinctively rushed forward, lifted the mask, and wanted to force the four-armed naga to see his face. Then he felt that his leg was entangled by something. It was a tail, a slender snake tail. No, it should be said, Yu Dongri finally remembered. The sacred mark on that guy was not a naga, but a gold-level sacred mark that originated from the second stage of the Brahmin pedigree. In India, naga, the characteristic of having 4 arms, was probably a mutation that had been passed down to Myanmar. Then he was thrown out. At the last moment, he threw out the short knife in his hand, trying to restrain the counterattacking naga. But then he saw that one of Naga's arms abandoned the machete, took out a flash bomb from his arms, and threw it at them. The next moment, a violent flash of light engulfed them. Huaishir quickly retreated, and the blade in his hand slashed forward. It seemed that nothing had been hit, but it seemed that he had cut something. Then they heard the sound of a gunshot. In the intense dizziness and nausea, Huaishir bent down, took out a bag of ashes from his arms, and threw it on the ground. The black fog engulfed everything. This move seemed to prevent the opponent from taking the opportunity to sneak attack, but when they recovered from the intense dizziness, they could no longer see Naga. He had escaped. Wang Hai was left in a pool of blood on the ground. His throat and chest had been cut open by a sharp blade, and blood was gushing out. He could not say anything. Huaishir rushed forward and reached out to check his pulse, but soon he withdrew his fingers. There was no saving him. A layer of dark green appeared on the wound, and the knife was dipped in poison. No, if it was the poisonous dragon Naga, it would be strange if it was not dipped in poison. Yu Dongri took a look and did not waste any more time. He seized the time to rummage through all the valuable documents. Huaishur helped Wang Hai up from the ground and tried to open his eyes. Wake up. You still have time. Who killed you? He took out the ring from his pocket. Who killed them? Who told you to hide here? Speak. Wang Hai. Wang Hai struggled with all his might, like a fish out of water. His two hands struggled to grab the life that abandoned him. He left a trail of blood on Huaishur's collar and tore off Huaishur's mask. When he saw Huaishur's face, he was stunned. Soon, his eyes became resentful and vicious. It's you. It's all your fault. His lips opened and closed, and he kept spitting out blood. But soon, a mocking smile appeared on his face. We will all die soon. He suddenly stopped struggling and grabbed the dagger beside him. He stabbed at his heart. Bang! Scarlet spurted out and fell on Huaishur's blank face. The fire burned. In the violent vibration, the upper layer seemed to explode again, and the bottom layer was about to collapse. Huaishur sighed and slowly put Wang Hai down. He put away the ring. What happened after that was nothing to write home about. Yu Dongri took him out of the transit warehouse before the Special Affairs Department arrived, and even drove him home. Looking at his distracted look, Cowherd could not help but shake his head. I know you have a lot of questions to ask. Have a good rest tonight. You can come to the detective's office tomorrow. Huaishur nodded, got out of the car, and watched him go away. When he returned home and opened the door of the living room, he saw Crow waiting there. You seem to need someone to talk to. The black bird stood on top of the boiling kettle and asked, Coffee? Tea? Chapter 63. When Huaishur put down the teacup, he felt as if the world had suddenly become clear. He didn't know if he should say that he was relieved of a burden or if he had gained some enlightenment. He was as calm as a monk in meditation. There was no fluctuation in his heart, as if he had gained enlightenment and seen through the world of mortals. Soon, he reacted and looked down at the rippling purple in the teacup. What is this? It's a special type of spiritual anesthetic. Crow raised his wings and pointed to the remaining tube on the table. I cut off some leftovers from the crying snake's horn and made 2 tubes. If you like them, I'll give them to you. Anesthetic? Huaishur asked, what is it used for? Let me think about how to put it. Crow pondered for a moment. If the physical anesthetic is to block out the pain, then it is to let you temporarily abandon your desires. After taking it for a short period of time, you won't feel anger, hesitation, or sadness. At the same time, you won't feel happiness, or pleasure. According to the creator of the medicine, the thing that hinders people from pursuing enlightenment is this innate instinct and emotion. Only after losing all of this, people will gain calmness from nothingness and obtain true rationality. And then do what you need to do. Crow shrugged. It's just a tranquilizer. What magical effect can it have? But sometimes this calmness that is not disturbed by external things is the most precious thing. At least the choice made in this situation will not make people regret it. As for the other effects, they are secondary. Huaishur understood. So, it's a regret medicine? It should be called no regret medicine. Crow asked, how do you feel? Very good. Huaishur let out a long breath and found a more comfortable position in the chair. He slowly relaxed and finally felt tired and sleepy. It was 3:00 in the morning. It was time to sleep. Then Crow asked, did you get anything? Nothing except for this. Huaishur swung his hand and threw the ring on the table. The platinum ring embedded with broken diamonds circled around the table a few times, then fell down and calmed down as it spun. The 2 names engraved on the inside of the ring were revealed. My parents are probably dead. In the silence, Huaisha lowered his head and stared at his parents' wedding rings, finally accepting this reality. Crow shook his head. Maybe he pawned it? Well, maybe he lost it? That's possible. Huaisha nodded. Thank you for your medicine. I feel much more relaxed now. There's no need to thank me. Crow shook his head. Just treat it as a contractor's duty. I'm going to sleep first. Do you still have work to do? I'll probably have to work overtime. Crow turned around and looked at the dim glow that was slowly rising from the reactor. The last stage is almost over. You really should rest. Why sure, have a good sleep. It leapt straight past the sleeping city, constantly bypassing all kinds of obstacles. It did not care about the people that brushed past it as it charged straight in the direction of the Stone Marrow Hall. In the end, it passed through the gloomy forest and stopped outside the iron door. Under the moonlight, the shadow on the ground wriggled hungrily, constantly crashing forward. However, it could not pass through the iron door that was big enough for a stray cat to enter freely. In the end, it jumped through the crack in the wall, jumped into the weedy courtyard, and hungrily crawled toward Huaisha's lock. There was a pop, like the sound of a bubble bursting. It was sent flying. In the broken window on the side of the main building, a pale face and a distorted body were reflected. It was like 7 or 8 people's organs were randomly pieced together. Several limbs were wriggling randomly, and the huge mouth in the abdomen was constantly opening and closing, dripping blood like saliva. It also reflected the figure in front of it. In the dirty glass, only a thin and tall figure could be seen. It could vaguely make out the clothes that were riddled with holes, the bow tie that was meticulously pinned to the broken collar, and the monocle that rested on the bridge of the nose. But at this moment, he was like a patrolling guard who saw a thief trying to climb over the wall. His face, which was clearly empty, showed unmistakable anger. The lips opened and closed in a silent warning. Get out! The completely out-of-control, corroded body screamed, waving its limbs wildly and pressing forward step by step. Then, the figure raised its left hand. The 5 fingers slowly closed. Silently, an invisible force closed in toward the center. Like a collision between iron walls, the ghost was squashed into a ball of paste. Then, the paste spontaneously combusted, leaving only a wisp of black smoke that disappeared into the air. The button that fell on the ground was carefully picked up. After washing it in front of the hose, the figure repeatedly wiped it with an old towel and put it in a box in the backyard's utility room. It was carefully placed together with a few dirty toys, 2 broken certificates, and an old photo of a baby. The box closed. The figure nodded slightly to Crow and said goodbye. Then it silently dissipated. In the quiet room, the 4-armed Naga sat in front of the mirror, quietly wiping the blood on the wound. After cleaning the withered wound, he took out a knife and scraped the lifeless, rotten flesh bit by bit, until the mournful bones below were exposed. He bent down and opened the box on the ground. After hesitating for a moment, he took out a tube of fiery red medicine. After opening the seal, he gritted his teeth and poured the boiling metal solution on the wound. In the sizzling sound, the Naga spasmed violently, letting out a dull roar. His long tail twitched, almost stirring the entire bathroom into pieces. In the end, the metal solution finally formed on the bones and merged with the flesh. It was like a new skin texture, indistinguishable from each other. Except for the tragic gap in the scales, no other wounds could be seen. He breathed a sigh of relief, as if he had collapsed. Removing the sacred mark, the burly Naga in the mirror slowly shrank. Even the 2 extra arms were retracted into the shoulder blades. The man named Hiluo was sweating profusely and panting. He looked at himself in the mirror. After a long time, He splashed his face with cold water and finally took 2 steps back. He slumped into the chair, his face pale. After a long time, he picked up the phone and dialed the number. "Boss," he said, "I might have screwed up. Did you fail?" "No, the people who know are all dead. But when I was silencing them, I met 2 ascendants. I don't know where they are from." On the other end of the phone, Chi-Wen was silent for a long time. He sighed regretfully. "Then we can only use the backup method." The phone hung up. Putting aside the large number of property rights changes, the transformation and changes of the industries under Chi-Wen in the past 2 years, as well as the special channel of Tomorrow News, even the various projects that Chi-Wen secretly operated were dug out. However, even AI Qin couldn't believe the results of the investigation. He wants to monopolize the shipping routes and supplies at the border of Penghu. AI Qin was amused by the results of the investigation. He is in charge of the transportation of goods and materials at the border of the sea. What makes him worthy? So far, it seems that he spent a large amount of money to lobby and guarantee, and he has already obtained the right to bid. The professor threw a macaron into his mouth and chewed. If there is someone behind him, it might not be impossible. AI Qing understood. "You mean the Yin family?" The professor shrugged slightly. "I only know that he has been running to Jinling very frequently these days." She had to admit that the professor's guess was very reasonable. The benefits of monopolizing the shipping routes at the border were definitely not just money. The hidden benefits behind it were also shockingly huge. Imagine, in a border that was isolated overseas, all the ascendants had to rely on themselves to travel and explore. If the Qi family could really bring such huge benefits to the Yin family, then the old man might not care about Qi-Wen's alienation over the years. Rather, after the 2 sides let go of their previous grudges, the cooperation between the 2 sides would become even closer. And Qi-Wen also fought for the initiative in this process. He was no longer an agent and a white glove that relied on someone else's charity, but a crucial collaborator that completed the transformation from a chess piece to a chess player. Things were different now. The more important it was at this juncture, the more she couldn't mess things up. If she wanted to use the Savior Society to investigate Qi-Wen, that old dog might do something. However, the next content of the file made her frown. Smuggling. Smuggling had never been a big deal, or rather, from a certain perspective, this gray industry was spread all over the world. Otherwise, where did the cheap and authentic goods in the country come from? However, the information hinted at by the next record made her expression turn serious. "Can you be sure?" "Of course not." The professor shrugged. "No one would reveal this kind of thing. No, everyone who knew the details has already been buried. How can we find any concrete evidence?" However, the report compiled by the professor clearly linked the large number of missing people in the surrounding countries over the years with the Qi family's smuggling routes. In other words, Qi-Wen might have been secretly smuggling a large number of people into Xianhai. But after all, people were alive. Even an idiot needed to eat, drink, and defecate every day. A living person appearing in a big city might not be conspicuous, but thousands of living people appearing in a small place like Xianhai. Even a ghost would know that something was wrong. But the problem was, where were the people? Where did they go? Did they disappear after coming to Xianhai? No, if that was the case, thinking about the returned citizens after the Salvation Society and the mutants that they reared, AI Qing had a guess of what happened to those people. In any case, the place that they went to would not be some kind of paradise. It looked like this was the basis of the cooperation between Qi-Wen and the Salvation Society. Qi-Wen provided them with an endless supply of people for their living sacrifices, while the purified people supported them in the dark under the guise of the Savior Society. Not only did they provide funds, they could even hand over some inconvenient tasks to them. This was a complete replica of Chi, Wen's gloves back in the Een family. It was just that his gloves were whiter than the others. It looked like he had learned a lot. Just as she was deep in thought, Ai Ching's expression changed slightly. After a long time, she closed the file. What else? The professor looked confused. If that's the case, you must have something that you are waiting to sell, right? Ai Ching looked at the professor calmly. What else have you not taken out? The professor chuckled awkwardly. I still can't hide anything from you. He took out a thin folder from under the table. He placed it on the table, but did not hand it over. Even though this information is not that important, I feel like it should be something that you should be concerned about. I promise it is worth the price. Ai Ching's expression was still cold. She was not in a hurry to promise the reward. She just looked at him quietly. After a long time, the professor sighed helplessly and pushed the folder over. You win, but this will cost you 3 times the original price. Ai Ching shook her head. I will only pay you twice the original price. Deal. The professor nodded, and his expression turned bitter and sad. Inside the folder was a stack of hospital records. There were medical records from the city, outside the city, and even foreign hospitals. There was also a detailed observation of the hospitalization process. The time was 8 years ago. The location was Xian High. 6 managers, 11 company executives, and a few dozen employees were all hospitalized because of various accidents and unexplained high fevers. At the time, there were even many rumors about the plague. Many years later, there were still people who remembered the panic in the market. But in the end, these were all small things that were not worth mentioning. These people were just ordinary people. There was nothing worth paying attention to. The only thing they had in common was that they had worked for the Huai Group and Chi, Wen's businesses to varying degrees. And the time was the year that the Huai family officially declared bankruptcy. After quietly reading the records in her hands, Ai Ching closed her eyes and let out a long sigh. Let me guess, she said softly. In the end, those people either became vegetative or were burned until they became retarded, right? The professor nodded. Soulless attraction. Ai Ching slowly opened her eyes. Her expression was gloomy. Without a doubt, this was a vicious incident caused by a virus that had been mutated by hell. A virus that parasitized and infected a human's body was not a problem that could be solved by normal antibiotics. When there were more than 10 abnormal situations, the local inspector should have immediately reported it to the astronomy committee. However, wasn't there a need to pay attention to how the report was submitted? Seriously reporting this as a vicious incident and casually mentioning a few abnormal situations in the corner of some records were 2 completely different results. To be able to settle this matter, that piece of trash must have received quite a bit of money. Ai Ching laughed coldly and tapped on the armrest. It seems like sending him to the border was too kind. Through a vicious virus, they had cleaned up all the insiders, leaving no evidence behind. And Chi Wen had officially swallowed the last of the Huai family's foundation. He had obtained a large number of businesses at a price that was close to plundering. He had completed a bloody capital accumulation and successfully established his own shipping company on the Huai family's corpse. He had gone from a penniless foreign merchant to a reputable tycoon in Xian High. It could be said that he had spent a lot of money. If there was no incitement from the Een family behind this, where did he get the courage to act so recklessly? The professor suddenly said, but there is one thing that does not explain. I know what you want to ask. Ai Ching could not help but laugh coldly. It was nothing more than why he had spared Huai Shi's life after completely swallowing up the family's assets. Isn't this the most considerate thing about Chi Wen, this loyal dog? Chapter 65. According to what AI Ching knew, the relationship between the Yin family and the Huai family could be traced back to 80 years ago. At that time, Huai Shi's great-grandfather was a rare rank 4 ascendant. He obtained a large amount of wealth from the open borders and retired. At that time, it could be said that he had helped the Yin family a lot and had played a significant role in reviving the declining Yin family. However, following the death of Huai Shi's great-grandfather, the Yin family began to rise again, but the Huai family had never produced another ascendant and gradually declined. In the end, the Yin family chose to hit the Huai family, while they were down when they needed funds the most, causing the Huai family to completely collapse. Following the death of Huai Shi's grandfather, Huai Shi's parents disappeared with a large amount of wealth. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. This process was so smooth that they could write 800,000 words. Even a ghost wouldn't believe that there wasn't something shady going on behind the scenes. It was a feast that everyone had worked together to create. Yin Shi ate the meat, Qi Wen drank the soup, and in the end, Huai Shi was left as a fig leaf. Look, it's not that I don't care about our old friendship. This is just normal business competition. It's just that your family's descendants are too outrageous. For the sake of all those years ago, I'll leave you a piece of cake. How humane is that? You can't say that I'm going overboard now, right? Obtaining practical benefits, preserving the Yin family's face, and giving an explanation to his old friend who passed away. Isn't it great to have all three? In any case, in this world, everyone would carry the person on their side. With this layer of explanation, everything became bright and beautiful. It was simply unreproachable. As for Qi Wen, that old dog actually wanted to break free from the Yin family's chains after obtaining the Ascension rank. That was another matter altogether. Over the years, Qi Wen acted as a protective umbrella for the returned citizens, quietly hiding all of the Savior Society's actions in the dark. Using this method, he rapidly searched for benefits and quietly grew stronger. It was as if he had already become a powerful force. Even the Yin family couldn't casually punish him. Instead, they had to squeeze out a smile and show their sincerity to welcome this once loyal dog back into their embrace. Right now, that old master must be in a wonderful mood, right? Even though she was angry and gloomy, AI Ching couldn't help but maliciously think that when that face full of age spots forced a smile, it must be very ugly. But then her heart sank again. How was he supposed to break the bad news to Huai Shi? Now, Huai Shi was watching the two of them quarrel. In the basement of the detective's office, once he stepped into the door, he heard the detective sigh. From how I see it, that group of returned pure people is going to do something big. I'm afraid Xian Hai will not be the only one in trouble. Shut the F***ck up. Yu Dongri was furious when he heard it. Can you stop making wild guesses with that crow's mouth of yours? Even if it's not, I'll make it sound like it is. Bullsh**T. This is called a reasonable guess. The detective sneered. Do you think I won't write a 100,000-word thesis for your QED? Go ahead and write it. The ability restriction order on you hasn't expired yet. Aren't you afraid that Tian will use the Rainbow Bridge to send a group of defenders to kill you? I might not be able to write about the returned pure people causing trouble, but you think I can't write about you? If one day I'm going to die, I'll definitely sell you first. Under Huai Shi's shocked gaze, the two of them started to brawl. To be more precise, it was the detective who was beaten up. Soon, the detective with a swollen face started to beg for mercy. Yu Dongri was already used to this man's foul mouth, so he let go and stopped arguing with him. Only Huai Shi had a hard time believing the layout of this basement. Impressive. He glanced at the various guns and grenades hanging on the wall. Do you sell these things as well? If I did, I would have been caught by the Special Affairs Department a long time ago. I wouldn't have the time to sit here and talk. The detective rolled his eyes. These are all tools used by someone to commit crimes. F***ck off. I'm doing this to bring peace to the people. Lu Dongli was sitting on a chair. He untied the bandages and poured medicine on his wounds while grimacing in pain, with his upper body naked. The wounds on the man's body were quite scary. The wounds that looked like children's mouths quickly closed under the medicine. After a night of treatment, they did not look so bad anymore. After he finally sighed in relief, he put on his clothes and looked at Huaisher seriously. You must have many questions to ask now. Huaisher was silent for a long time before he scratched his head, awkwardly. Actually, I've pretty much figured out everything that I need to know. There's nothing much to ask. If I really have to say something, I hope that Tian will deal with the issue of the returned pure people as soon as possible. Actually, they've already started. Yu Dongri looked troubled. But the problem is, Xianhai is not the only place facing this problem. I got the news from the action department last night. He sighed helplessly. The entire coastal area of Dongxia, including Xianhai, has discovered the returned pure people in more than 6 cities. Their fishing boats are even on the sea. If you ask me, I think they're really going to do something big this time. That's why they're in such a hurry to gather their forces. In fact, all the border hunters in the Jinling area have already started to mobilize, but Dongxia refused the Tian's intervention. In the end, they'll probably use the power of the Social Security Bureau. The Social Security Bureau is the upper-level organization of the Special Affairs Department. It's the department that manages the ascendants in Dongxia. Although the name is similar to another place, it's actually a separate and secret department. You'll probably get used to it in the future. Huaisher was silent for a long time before he nodded. He noticed Yu Dongri's helpless expression and squeezed out a smile. Sorry, I didn't sleep well last night. It's normal. No one can sleep well in a situation like that. Yu Dongri comforted him as if he didn't notice anything. He put a cup of hot tea in front of him and said, "Drinking more hot water is good for your health." It's hard to avoid dealing with such matters when working for the Astronomy Society. He deliberately avoided the scene of Huaisher losing control last night. Although he could feel that Huaisher was hiding something, Yu Dongri did not intend to delve into it. No one was born with godly strength, just like no one was born with perfection. There would always be times when everyone would encounter something troublesome. Chattering and asking too many questions would not solve any problems. It would only annoy others. However, he felt that something was different about Huaisher. He didn't look like the young man from the past, nor did he look like the evil spirit he saw last night. She clearly looked like she hadn't woken up yet, but she gave people the feeling that she had finally been freed from a long dream and was able to return to the mortal world. Something was injected into the empty shell of a smile. It made him different from the past. Just as Yu Dongri was thinking uneasily, he suddenly heard a bang in front of him. He saw Huaisher slap his knee and suddenly get up. His expression suddenly became flustered. F***ck. What's wrong? He looked up in surprise. I just remembered. Huaisher slowly turned back, looking nervous. I don't think I practiced the piano today. Yu Dongri rolled his eyes and didn't want to say anything. Sure enough, he was overthinking. If this kind of guy was left alone, he would only be a fool for the rest of his life. After confirming that Yu Dongri's injuries were fine, Huaisher was ready to leave. He was also told by Yu Dongri not to reveal his whereabouts. He was afraid that this guy was going to do some investigation next. Although Huaisher wanted to know, he still had to report to AI Qing this afternoon. He really didn't have time. But just as he was about to leave, he was stopped by Yu Dongri. Why sure? In the end, Yu Dongri couldn't help but worry. Are you okay? I'm fine. Why sure turned back and waved at him with a smile. Don't worry. Just like you said, I have to learn to accept it, right? Yu Dongri was stunned. The door closed, and the young man's footsteps gradually faded away. Why did he leave? The detective, who had just rummaged through the boxes and cabinets to get the purchase list, looked in the direction of the young man's departure. After a long time, he shook his head and sighed. Wow, why does your little brother seem to be in a hurry? Yu Dongri sighed helplessly. Then he turned around and rushed up to beat him. Shut the F***ck up, Crow. At 4:00 in the afternoon, it started to drizzle. The rainy season was about to begin. Fortunately, Huai sure moved quickly and rang Ai Qing's doorbell before the rain got wet. Since she was the only official member of the local astronomy club, she didn't need to set up an office in an office building. The office was directly set up in the study on the second floor of her house. According to Huai Shi's conjecture, he even suspected that Ai Qing might have pocketed the venue rental fee that was given to her by the higher-ups. It was really enviable, after arriving outside the door, looking at the exquisite little garden and villa behind the fence. Huai Shi couldn't help but feel worried. They were all houses, but why did his house look so poor? Sure enough, he should sell some more powder and find someone to paint the outer wall. Or buy a few new pieces of furniture, he thought as he was welcomed into the house by Ai Qing's maid and brought to the study on the second floor. Mrs. Waiting for you. She pushed the door open and motioned for Huai Shi to come in. Ai Qing's study could only be said to be extremely simple. There were no bookshelves, elegant paintings, or potted plants. There was only a table and a chair for guests. Ai Qing seemed to be writing something on the computer. She frowned slightly and didn't notice Huai Shi coming in. It wasn't until the maid served tea and reminded her in a low voice that she came back to her senses. Sorry, I'm submitting some reports on the problems left behind by my predecessor. She rubbed her forehead and looked up at Huai Shi. She was stunned for a moment. What's wrong with you? Me? I'm fine. Huai Shi smiled blankly and scratched his head. Probably because you didn't sleep well? Ai Qing looked at him strangely for a long time, as if she accepted this explanation, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked like she didn't know what to say. Did something happen? Huai Shi asked. No, nothing. Ai Qing shook her head and denied it. She took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. It was rare for her to lose her composure. By the way, why did I call you over? Huai Shi wasn't sure. I remember you said it was a courier? Yes, a courier. Ai Qing rubbed her eyebrows. After a long time, she suddenly said, I remembered wrong. I originally wanted to say that the bounty for the red gloves has been issued. Huai Shi was puzzled. The people of Green Sun generally have bounties on the Astronomical Association and various countries. Although most of them are similar to the bounty for the head, there are still quite a lot of bounties. A total of 3. $47 million will be transferred to your account later. After being stunned for a long time, Huai Shi finally reacted. Hearing that more than $3 million had fallen from the sky was like picking up a diamond-studded golden pillow. When he was sleepy, he was overjoyed and excited. Oh, thank you. Ai Qing was silent for a long time. She glanced at the box under the table, and her expression became a little complicated. In the end, she didn't take it out. Congratulations, she said. From now on, you don't have to work for money anymore. Chapter 66. The transfer was not troublesome. To avoid trouble for Huaishir, AI Qing even used the highest exchange rate in the past few days to help him convert the money into East Xia dollars. She transferred the money to him through the Astronomy Society's bank account to prevent him from being investigated because of the unknown source of his wealth. As a country of the Free City Alliance, the American Federation could be said to be the world's largest economy. It also had the world's largest reserves of gold and spirit crystals. It operated the world's largest spirit crystal exchange business, so the currency was very valuable. The exchange rate with East Xia dollars could reach 1. That was a total of more than $12 million. Suddenly, he became a rich man. Huaishir was overjoyed. With so much money, even if it was only 1/3, it was enough for him to completely renovate his old house and buy a full set of new furniture. As for the remaining 2/3, half was given to Crow for budget, and the other half was left for living expenses. It would allow him to live in this small city of Exinhai until the end of time. After throwing away the burden of being poor, for so many years, his mood suddenly became much more relaxed. He slumped in the chair and did not want to move. There's one more thing I want to tell you. AI Qing took a deep breath, and her expression became serious. The Astronomy Society has already labeled your act of killing the Red Gloves as a righteous act. In other words, the Special Affairs Division will not be able to find trouble with you anymore. I think we should terminate the contract. Huaishir. Huaishir looked at her with confusion. Terminate the contract? Yes. AI Qing nodded. The current no longer needs to work for me. In the end, you don't have any responsibility for all of this. You should regain the freedom you deserve. After this week, I will do the above and review in the weekly report. Soon, you can return to your life. Huaishir looked at her in shock. After a long time, he scratched his head and asked curiously, "But if I leave, what will you do?" AI Qing was stunned. After a long time, she closed her eyes and smiled tiredly. She just shook her head, but did not explain anything. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Huaishir did not hear clearly. "No, it's nothing." AI Qing shook her head and stood up with the help of her cane to see him off. "You should go. Huaishir, I hope you can realize your dream in the free world in the future." Her attitude was firm. Huaishir didn't know what to say. He nodded slightly and was about to leave when he heard the phone on the table behind him. Soon, the call was picked up, and Director Fu's voice could be vaguely heard. There was also AI Qing's suppressed anger. Qi, when brought people here to turn himself in? How can he turn himself in just because he said so? Huaishir stopped in his tracks. Soon, he closed the door and left. By the time AI Qing arrived at the Special Affairs Department, the interrogation had already begun. What happened? AI Qing tossed her umbrella aside and pushed open the door to the observation room without waiting for the wheelchair. Then, she saw Qi Wen drinking tea with Director Fu. Qi Wen put down his teacup and smiled helplessly at her. "Long time no see, Xiao Qing. I didn't expect you to see third uncle's ugly deeds." AI Qing's expression was indifferent as she looked at Director Fu. Director Fu sighed and pointed at the one-way mirror beside him, indicating for him to see for himself. In the interrogation room, sitting behind the table was a middle-aged man with a pale face. He was being interrogated with his head lowered and confessed to all his crimes. "What's going on?" AI Qing turned around, her eyes gloomy. "Who is that?" "My family is unfortunate." Qi Wen lowered his eyes and sighed sadly. "That's my nephew, Qi Pei. He was raised by me since he was young, and he's smart and capable. I trusted him so much and entrusted him with important tasks, but I didn't expect that bastard to be so blinded by greed. He actually colluded with that group of evil cultists and did so many ugly things. At this point, he was so angry that he almost couldn't breathe. Now that things have come to this, even I can't help him hide it. Director Fu, Xiaoqing, please don't mind an old man like me. I will enforce the law impartially. He sighed sadly. Qi Pei brought about his own downfall. He can't blame anyone else. AI Qing didn't say anything else. She didn't even think about going in to find any loopholes. There were simply too many scapegoats like this. In the collection of 10,000 sins, scapegoats were a type of professional service. From the lowest level of scapegoats to the highest level of customization, they could even change a person from the inside out through implanting memories, catalyzing origin substances, and altering their consciousness. They could even make the person believe that they were a criminal. There would also be a team of specialized legal experts and criminal consultants who would help the employer clean up every detail and mistake from the inside out, completing all the processes so that a criminal would be completely perfect. For at least 20 million USD, they could make someone else take responsibility for all of their crimes. They could even make someone else take action in their place, even if it was to assassinate the President of the United States. No matter how much they interrogated him, it wouldn't be of any use. Instead, it would help Qi Wen clear himself of all suspicion. All he would have to bear was the stain of a bad judge of character, as well as the reputation of placing righteousness before family. After getting rid of the last person in the know, just as he had planned, he was able to extricate himself from this quagmire and find a way out for himself from the pursuit of the Astronomical Association and the Special Investigations Department. In the interrogation room, the perpetrator nodded his head mechanically, taking responsibility for all of the crimes on himself. No matter if it was 7 years ago, when he had lured the Huai couple away with a donation and then murdered them, or when he had collaborated with the purified citizens, he had taken responsibility for every single one of them. He had even confessed to many accomplices and undiscovered matters. This confession was like the art of flowing water. It was very pleasing to watch, and every sentence was filled with unexpected twists and suspense. It was enough to occupy the main plot of a novel. At the same time, he had built a high wall for Qi Wen. It was flawless. AI Qing didn't say anything else. She watched calmly, almost indifferently, as this farce came to an end. She watched as Qi Wen shook off all of the dirt on his body and became clean and white again, just like an old dog that had come ashore. It wasn't until he walked out of the interrogation room that AI Qing, who was standing at the door, spoke. "Do you think you can get rid of everything that happened to you just like that?" she asked coldly. "Or are you saying that no one will find out about what you did in the past? You need evidence to speak." "Xiaoqing, do you have evidence?" Qi Wen shook his head helplessly and sighed. "It's really sad that you have such a deep misunderstanding of Third Uncle. After so many years, Third Uncle has watched you grow up. Don't you know what kind of person Third Uncle is?" As such, he smiled helplessly and dotingly. When he looked down at her cold expression, the corners of his mouth curled up into a happy smile. In the gradually empty corridor, he reached out and took a copper pipe from He Luo's hand. He slowly lit a cigar, took a deep breath, and exhaled a scornful mist. "Actually, it doesn't matter. So what if they find out? Come after me? Don't joke around. Tomorrow afternoon, Jinling's Social Security Bureau will hold a bid for the border of Penghu. I will definitely win, even without the Yin family. At that time, I will be the person who controls the lifeline of Penghu." Qi Wen watched as Qi Pei, who had surrendered, was escorted to the prison. He casually waved his hand and said nonchalantly, "Even if something happens, even the Special Affairs Division can only clear my name. What can the Astronomy Society do to an innocent old man who was deceived by a cult?" He retracted his gaze and looked at the girl in front of him with pity. Xiao Qing, you're still too young and inexperienced. AI Qing was expressionless. She only asked back, do you think you can go to Jinling tomorrow? It's not a thought, it's a fact. One was full of confidence. If you think you can use the power of the Astronomy Society to make me stay, you can try. AI Qing angrily clenched her walking stick. In the end, she didn't say anything. Don't be sad, and don't show such an angry look. Wen shook his head and sighed softly. Isn't your great-grandfather the best example? I started from the age of 29 and followed him for 20 years. I only learned one thing, and that is the winner takes all. As he spoke, he raised his hand and told her seriously and solemnly through the wisp of smoke, this is the truth of this world. AI Qing looked at him indifferently. I'm not stupid enough to listen to an old dog's story. Mr. Qi, you don't have to waste your time with me. Regarding this, Wen only smiled tolerantly. Finally, he tidied up his suit. He raised his hand and gently brushed the dust off her shoulder. Do you remember what third uncle told you? He bent down and whispered mockingly in the girl's ear, children who leave home have to suffer. Wen ignored AI Qing and turned to leave. He walked towards the door of the Special Affairs Division. The road was smooth. At the door, Luo had already held an umbrella for him, but his footsteps stopped on the steps. He raised his head and looked at the gloomy sky. In the dim and pale clouds, the rain continued to fall to the earth. It was like in the past. The first time he came to this city, it was the same disgusting scene. From then on, he hated this decaying city. Wen retracted his gaze and walked into the car. Luo put away the umbrella and returned to the driver's seat. He turned around and asked, Boss, are we going home or to the company? No, we're going directly to Jinling. Wen raised his eyes slightly. Qing, that little girl, is just like her great-grandfather in her bones, enduring silently, but she definitely doesn't lack courage. No, it should be said that she has the courage to act recklessly, right? I deliberately provoked her today, but she was able to hold back. In the end, she didn't use any of her backup methods. But if we go back like this, she'll use the authority of the Astronomical Society to investigate tonight. Even if she doesn't find anything, she'll forcefully take me away to cooperate with the questioning. It won't take too long, just 20 hours. It'll be enough to make all my previous efforts go to waste. Luo was stunned. What about Xiao Yuan? Don't worry, he's already been arranged to be in a safe place. Even to his confidant, Wen didn't reveal his entire plan. He was even more guarded. Did you make the arrangements last night? Luo nodded. Very good. We'll go to the south of the city first, then take the Xinjiang highway. Wen said slowly, arrange for people to take the sea route. Also, remember to keep that thing well. Luo nodded knowingly. After a series of orders were passed down through Luo and the secretary in the front passenger seat, Wen slowly narrowed his eyes. After preparing for so many years, it's time to turn things around. From today onwards, no one would be able to make him his lackey. In the gradually thickening curtain of rain, the motorcade disappeared into the gradually dimming light on the horizon. It was as if they were drowned in darkness. Wen gradually fell asleep. After a long time, he suddenly opened his eyes. The car stopped. Chapter 67. The entire Special Affairs Division was completely silent. Everyone felt as if a volcano was about to erupt. When they passed by the director's office, they all tiptoed. They were afraid that the slightest noise would trigger the bomb inside and drown them in anger. You're scaring them. Director Fu sighed helplessly. He looked at the shadows that quietly floated by the unlatched door and poured a cup of tea for the girl in front of him. What are you afraid of? You're afraid of a cripple, like me? AI Ching seemed to be amused, but there was no trace of a smile on her face or in her eyes. Don't worry, no matter how bad it is, I won't make a scene in the Special Affairs Division. No, I just want to persuade you to calm down. Director Fu shook his head. He wanted to smoke, but he seemed to have thought of something. After hesitating for a long time, he finally rolled up his sleeves and put a nicotine patch on his arm. Whether it's the Astronomy Society or the Social Security Bureau, in the end, we still have to follow the rules. Since there are rules, there will definitely be things that are not happy. You don't need to put too much pressure on yourself. To be honest, I'm not worried about Chi-Wen. AI Ching sneered indifferently. No matter how much he looks like a person, he still has the habits of a dog in his bones. Just because he has a few bones, he will carry them around and show them off. If he is content with staying in a corner, the Yin family can't do anything to him for the time being. But he actually wants to jump into the quagmire of Jinling. He doesn't even think about it. No matter how powerful he is he as powerful as the Hui family in the past? In less than 2 years, he would be completely devoured by those aristocratic families. At that time, he would probably have to thank the Yin family for sparing his life out of consideration for their past relationship, right? What I'm worried about is the people who are purified. In this matter, Chi-Wen is not the key, but the problem is that all the clues we could find were all destroyed by Chi-Wen, that bastard who thinks he's smart. She knocked on the armrest expressionlessly. Now, other than a pile of corpses and ruins, we only have a Boolsh *T prophecy poem in our hands. Under such circumstances, if those fellows really make any moves, we're simply sitting ducks. Director Fu didn't say anything. He just anxiously rolled up his sleeves and put on 2 more nicotine patches. After so many days, whether it was the internal announcement or the private communication between colleagues, they had almost all learned about the situation around them and the large-scale mobilization of the pure people that had not happened in recent years. Not only Xian Hai, more than 8 cities had also discovered the anomaly. Almost the entire eastern coast of Dongxia had been affected. If they weren't careful, another border war would break out. Who knew how many people would be affected? No one wanted sparks to break out in their own jurisdiction, whether it was from the perspective of duty or professional life. However, this was not the only thing that made AI Ching feel uneasy. There was something else that made her frustrated and even angry. Just like when you forgot to bring your keys or turn off the faucet, the premonition lingered around. When you knew that your damn intuition was about to start working again, it was hard to feel good. Although this talent was appreciated by many, few people could understand how much AI Ching hated it. Especially when you didn't know when the shoe upstairs would drop, it made her hate it even more. This anxiety curled around her mind until a certain moment. She finally found the source of this anomaly. She stood up abruptly, grabbed the walking stick, and walked back to the door of the interrogation room. She looked around. The corridor was empty, and there were trash cans everywhere. The ashtray on top of the trash cans was filled with a small bottle that looked like an eyesore. AI Ching reached out to pick up the bottle that was about the size of a thumb. There was still a drop of light purple liquid left inside. It smelled faintly bitter, like some kind of drug. The test paper that she carried with her showed an orange-red reaction. She could confirm that this was some kind of drug that came from the border. The orange-red color was between the red that represented a stimulant and the yellow that represented a tranquilizer. She looked at Director Fu. Who else was here earlier? Director Fu was confused. He pulled over a random subordinate who had just finished organizing the statement, but the subordinate also looked at them with confusion. Are you talking about why sure? The subordinate thought about it and then turned to AI Ching. Aren't you guys together? Pa, The bottle shattered on the ground. Finally, when the other boot was finally thrown down from upstairs, AI Ching realized that other than being stunned and shocked, she actually felt a sense of relief. "What's wrong?" Director Fu asked. AI Ching supported herself with her walking stick and waved her hand weakly. "Now go and check your personnel. Focus on the armed guards and their weapons." Director Fu trusted and understood AI Ching. Even though she did not explain anything, he still gave the order according to her request. Soon, after a short search and inventory, the attendance and arrival records for the day were handed over to him. Not a single one of the armed guards was missing. However, there was an error in the attendance record. Someone was missing. Soon, the missing person was found in the cubicle of the toilet. His body was tied with rope, and his mouth was sealed with tape. He was struggling with all his might. Old Wang. Director Fu was stunned. As soon as the tape was torn open, Old Wang ignored his violent coughing and shouted loudly, "It's why sure, it's why sure." He took the key to the armory. "Really, this is terrible." In a moment of dead silence, AI Ching leaned against the corner of the wall and closed her eyes tiredly. That bastard. Did he know what he had done? Soon, the shadow of a young man carrying a travel bag was seen walking out of the armory. It was as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. From time to time, he would wave and say hello to acquaintances passing by. He walked all the way out of the Secret Service office unimpeded. He had an automatic rifle, 6 magazines, 2 pistols, 50 pistol bullets, 6 grenades, 2 plastic explosives, and so on. It was like he was shopping in a supermarket. He had returned with a full load. With a calm smile on his face, he hailed a taxi and left silently. Director Fu was going crazy when he saw this. Damn it, if he had known, he would have shot that bastard on the spot. He pulled the sweaty guard over and questioned him loudly. "How long has he been gone?" 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Even a dog can sense that something is wrong in 20 minutes. Are you worse than a dog? Director Fu was so angry that he almost tore the guard's hand off. Seeing AI Ching calmly drinking tea next to him, he became even more irritated. "Why aren't you anxious at all? What's the use of being anxious?" AI Ching put down her teacup and sighed softly. "If we really want to start preparing for something, maybe we can start discussing what style to use for qi. When's funeral? 20 minutes? Don't be kidding. It's too late. 20 minutes ago, it was raining cats and dogs. On the viaduct, the taxi sped along, breaking through the layers of rain. Disco songs from more than a decade ago were playing in the car. As the Buddha plate hanging from the rearview mirror rotated, the driver shook his head and hummed along with the song. In the passenger seat, the young man holding a huge travel bag stared blankly at the rain outside the window, as if he was looking at the blackbirds in the sky. "Young man, this won't do," the driver said. "You've been in the car for half a day, and you don't even have a destination. Now that we're almost on the highway, can you at least tell me where you're going? Why don't I find a place for you and you change cars? I'll charge you $20 less." In the silence, the young man just looked out the window quietly, as if he didn't say anything. It was only when the driver couldn't help but ask again that he spoke. "No need, sir. Just leave me here." On the viaduct, "Young man, do you want to die?" The driver looked at him in shock. "You'll lose points if you park here. It's okay." The young man took out a foldable raincoat from the travel bag and put it on. "When the time comes, just say that you were threatened by me." As he spoke, he unzipped the travel bag and showed the driver the gun and the bronze bullets inside. Suddenly, the driver slammed on the brakes, and the taxi stopped on the viaduct, almost causing a rear-end collision, and provoking angry honks. The driver's face was pale, and he raised his hands. "Young man, please spare me. I still have a family to feed. I only have this much money. If it's not enough, I'll get more." The young man smiled, shook his head, and took out his phone. He scanned the QR code and paid 3 times the price. "Sorry to trouble you." He opened the door with his bag and politely said goodbye. "I wish you a happy life. Goodbye." The door closed. In the heavy rain, the taxi sped up wildly and fled. Huaishur was left alone in the same place. The thick curtain of rain seemed to swallow everything. Countless raindrops shattered in an instant, setting off a roar as if the world was shattering. Other than that, there was a palpitating silence. Everything became foggy. Only the traffic lights under the viaduct were glaring red. The cars coming and going came out of the rain and fog and disappeared into the rain and fog, just like running monsters. And right in the middle of the countless steel monsters, Huaishur stood in the middle of the viaduct. He bent down and put down the travel bag. One by one, he clipped the pistol, magazine, and bullets to the vest under his raincoat. He sorted them out. These on the left, those on the right, and some in the middle. So it gradually became heavy. So it gradually became full. It was as if he had found his internal organs one by one. They seemed to be beating in his empty lungs. Step by step, he became whole again. His empty body seemed to welcome back the aura of his soul, until finally he picked up the heavy automatic rifle and hung it on his shoulder. In a trance, Huaishur seemed to finally be whole, but it seemed that something was missing, until he finally remembered to put the earphones hanging on his collar into his ears. Then, the rough drumbeat and bass tore apart the noisy silence. "Hashalos Thismond, Canasira Shebland." The young man tapped his fingers on the gun and hummed softly along with the song. Can he walk all the blood will he fall? Did he still have any sense? Was he blind? Could he still move forward? Or would he fall down as soon as he moved? In the long or short wait, he shook his head along with the rhythm of the drumbeat. He wandered between the rain and the viaduct. Like an invisible soul, he let the heavy cars pass by. It was as if he was waiting for the bell to ring in the distance, until the pitch-black birds once again streaked across the shadows of the rain. He slowly raised the gun in his hand, put it on his shoulder, and removed the safety. Through the rain on his hood, he stared at the outline gradually emerging in the rain. The high beam illuminated his eyes. At that moment, he pulled the trigger. Chapter 68. Bang, bang, bang. Like champagne shattering on a stone slab, the rainwater on the gun vibrated, flew up, and stopped in midair. In the almost frozen time, smoke slowly spewed out from the air vent of the gun, together with tiny sparks. In the blink of an eye, the sound of friction turned into a low roar. The bullets rotated in the barrel, rubbing along the rifling and bursting with sparks. 3 burning red bullets flew out of the muzzle, tore through the air, and smashed the solidified rain. The burning light reflected in the broken rain, and at this moment, an unknown illusory light was refracted. Then, the illusory light was torn to pieces by the deafening gunfire along with the rain. After crossing a long distance, the killing intent that had solidified into metal whizzed over, smashed the front window of the motorcade, and sank into a strange face in the passenger seat. Blood splattered. The loud noise spread. Huaishur stood where she was, gazing at the shattered front window through the barrel of the gun. She pulled the trigger again. The gun but hit his shoulder, shaking up the water droplets on his raincoat. They flew into the air and merged into the broken fog. Then, the harsh sound of brakes came from a distance. The car in the front seemed to have skidded, running wildly in the rain and splashing water. In the end, It suddenly lost its center of gravity and began to roll and slide. In the end, it fell to the ground with its chassis facing the sky and no longer moved. In the gradually rising thick smoke, only a few wheels were still slowly rotating on their own. They separated from the axles and fell to the ground, rolling far away. The gunshots were still raining down like rain. When a bullet completely blew up the fuel tank, viscous flames gushed out from the basket and rose into the sky. It was as if a bonfire had been lit in the thick fog, emitting a violent light. It illuminated the shadow standing on the dugga. In the distance, the traffic stopped at that moment. All that could be heard was the sharp sound of horns and the sound of cars reversing. The entire dugga seemed to have been taken away from the city by the storm and fog, becoming lonely and silent. Huaisher stood in place, pulled out the magazine, and threw it on the ground. He took out a new magazine from under his raincoat and stepped forward. Just behind the overturned car, the moving convoy came to an abrupt halt. The cars at the back began to retreat quickly, while the car at the front suddenly turned sideways. The windows opened, and the bodyguards in the car began to fire back. They jumped out one by one, then fell down one by one. Huaisher stood behind the burning basket and pulled out the empty magazine. She rummaged around in her pocket until she found the handle. She opened the cover and pressed the trigger. Silence. He was stunned for a moment, lowered his head, and pressed again. Thus, a heart-relaxing roar came from afar. Amidst the loud noise, the plastic explosive stuck on the bridge suddenly exploded, and the gushing flames engulfed everything. Large pieces of broken stones, and the bridge fell from the overpass and fell into the rolling river, splashing water and disappearing. The motorcade that was rapidly retreating came to an abrupt halt, hovering at the edge of the fracture. He was so close. Huaisher clicked his tongue, threw away the grip in his hand, pulled out the magazine again, stepped over the flowing flames on the ground, and slowly walked toward them. When the blast of the explosion ended, the rainwater that had accumulated in the air once again fell to the ground. It covered everything. It engulfed the thin figure. Amidst the violent tremors, Chiwen woke up from his dizziness and was almost thrown out of the chair. He reached out to support himself on the back of the chair in front of him and looked at Hiluo in the driver's seat in shock. What's going on? Someone is attacking. Boss, don't move. Hiluo put down the steering wheel and picked up the walkie-talkie. Car 0 is safe. Are cars 2, 3, and 4 still there? Amidst the sound of the electric current, there was a continuous response. It was mixed with the roar of gunshots. The dense rainstorm scattered endless water droplets, as if swallowing everything. Nothing could be seen clearly, and only the continuous gunshots, screams, and roars could be heard from the walkie-talkie. Finally, there were heavy footsteps among the gunshots. Pa-pa, whoosh. It sounded like someone was curiously flipping through the walkie-talkie on the other end. He patted it hard twice, shook off the water inside, and then brought it close to his mouth and greeted curiously. Hello, is Mr. Chi there? No one responded. F***CK. Could it be the wrong person? That's not right. It shouldn't be. The voice on the other end coughed awkwardly. Let me introduce myself. I'm from Huaihai Road. Ba. I'm actually Huaisher. Do you know me, Mr. Chi? Chiwen didn't say anything. He just stayed silent and listened to the voice on the walkie-talkie. His face was ashen. It doesn't matter. It's fine if you don't know me. The other end side. You've taken care of my parents for so many years. I wonder if they're still alive. There was still no response. Then there was a regretful sigh. Is that so? Then there's nothing I can do. Bang! Gunshots came from the other end of the walkie-talkie, and then there were 2 more. There was complete silence. there was the sound of bullet casings falling to the ground, followed by the sound of reloading. Then, there seemed to be another car exploding in the distance. In a fleeting moment, it illuminated a thin figure. The transparent raincoat fluttered in the air waves of the explosion. It was as ethereal as the clothes of a departed spirit. Luadi's expression became serious. He unbuckled his seatbelt, shrugged his shoulders, and moved his muscles and bones. Soon, as his skin wriggled, layers of dark green scales emerged from under his skin, covering his hands and face inch by inch, turning him into a burly Naga once again. He took out a double-barreled shotgun and 4 machetes from the toolbox, and was about to stand up to fight the enemy, but Chiwen pressed on his shoulder from behind. "Be careful, he's trying to lure us away." The old man's expression was ashen, and it kept changing. There was a hint of malevolence. I knew that there would be competitors who might attack, but I didn't expect it to be the remnants of the Huai family. Well, I might as well send his family off today. As he spoke, he picked up the phone and dialed a number. "How long are you going to wait?" he asked coldly. "Are you afraid of a little brat?" "Boss Chi, it takes time to take a detour." The man who answered the phone sighed, helplessly. "We were almost blown into the river, okay? Who told us that Dongxia was a peaceful country? It's one thing to throw explosives everywhere, but how can a little kid be so crazy?" Chiwen said coldly, "Maybe he's an ascendant. Don't underestimate him." "Don't worry, this isn't a direct confrontation." The middle-aged man who answered the phone laughed. "We're professionals in war." In that instant, the roar of an off-road vehicle's engine rang out from the other side of the overpass. It rampaged, tearing through the curtain of rain as it whistled over. On the slowly opening roof of the car, something slowly rose. It was covered with a dust-proof cloth, but it couldn't hide its malevolent shape. As the disguise was torn away, the machine gun hidden below revealed the reflection of steel. Immediately after, countless blazing bullet casings flew from the vibrating gun into the torrential rain. The wildly spinning machine gun spat out a whip of thunder and fire that swept over. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.